Hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Luna Nguyen. I am a member of the DSA International Committee. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm based here in Philadelphia. And as far as the International Committee goes, I'm also a co-chair of the Asia and Oceania Subcommittee. Thanks everyone again for joining us tonight. Tonight we are very proud, very excited to be hosting a screening of The Little Girl of Hanoi with Luna from the Luna Nguyen YouTube channel. But let me just give just a brief introduction as to the event and who we are. We are the DSA International Committee. We are one of the national level working groups for the Democratic Socialists of America. And we organize around international affairs, foreign policy, migration, opposing war, these types of things, from an anti-colonial and anti-imperialist perspective for DSA. And Luna, I'll let her maybe speak a little more herself when I want to pass the mic over. But Luna is the preeminent English language Vietnamese socialist YouTuber. Luna provides an invaluable public service by demystifying the Socialist Republic of Vietnam for people in the English-speaking world, as well as providing just invaluable political and social political and historical commentary and analysis to help us all learn and become better organizers for the tasks in front of us today. In addition to that, Luna has also just translated the official Vietnamese curriculum on dialectical materialism into English. I highly recommend people check that out. That's not quite the focus of this event today, though. So I'll leave that to her again. But what this event today is about is actually, a lot of Americans don't know this. Today is actually an official U.S. federal government holiday. It is Vietnam War Veterans Remembrance Day. I just want to ask people real quick, feel free to just type things in the chat. Has anyone ever seen commemorations to Vietnam War veterans in the United States? If so, do these celebrations, do these commemorations, have any of y'all ever seen any of these speak to the civilian death toll in Vietnam? Has anyone ever seen these commemorations speak to the 3 to 6 million Vietnamese people who lost their lives, or the soldiers on the other side? I'm guessing folks have not. And indeed, that's actually that's the main impetus for this event. But I would also just briefly shout out the office of Senator Jabari Brisport from New York. He's a state senator that's been endorsed by DSA. I was actually through a conversation with his office where they mentioned that every year the Vietnam War Veterans Remembrance Day commemorations just always exclude any Vietnamese perspective. And maybe this could be a point of engagement for the International Committee. Well, a couple conversations and a good amount of work later, here we are. And we're very glad, very excited to be doing this with Luna, and very grateful that you are all here with us tonight to gain some additional perspective on this holiday on the Vietnam War. So with that intro, I've spoken enough for myself and DSAIC. Let me pass this over to our guest of honor, our guide for tonight, Luna. Please take it away.
Hi everybody, I'm Luna. I am a Vietnamese communist socialist born and living in Vietnam. I'm currently visiting the USA, but I will be back to my country very soon. And it is my honor to be here today and to have a chance to talk to all of you. And it is really great that, you give us a chance, you give Vietnamese people a chance to show the actual Vietnamese perspective about the Vietnam War, instead of, like what you've been listening, as Ellen just said, like bombardment of the US perspective of the Vietnam War. And I am very excited and nervous at the same time doing this. And the movie that you're going to watch today is a movie about the girl of Hanoi. And the movie was shot in 1973, just 6 months after the actual bombing campaign of the USA, the campaign linebacker second. And so all the footage, all the broken like houses and war and street and all the bombs, they were all true. all real, because like it's just 6 months after the actual bombing, and all the like the people working on the street and crying on the street, that is real. And even the story of the girl of Hanoi is a combination of two true stories that happened right at that time in Hanoi 1972. So this is gonna be the movie made by Vietnamese about the Vietnam War from the actual Vietnamese perspective. And it's not just a movie, it is also a documentary, because there's no movie set, everything is real, even the story. So I'm very excited.
Thanks very much for that explanation, Luna. So this movie, just so everyone has the context, everyone has just this, just a sense of the what the schedule is. This movie is going to run for around 70 minutes. After which we'll transition into a discussion with Luna. Please feel free to start prepping your questions now. There should be an option for you to enter it in the in like a Q&A section of the chat. If you're having trouble with that, just please DM either myself, Gerard, Ron, or Ryan, and we'll get you set up. With that, without further ado, tech team, do we have the movie queued up and ready to go? Wow. Thanks everyone for watching that. I'm just curious. If folks could put their initial immediate reactions to the film in the chat. I know I'm definitely feeling things after that. But just like give folks, I think you'll give folks just a few seconds for us to transition from what we just saw into the discussion portion as well.
Yeah, this movie is definitely very emotional.
Well, Luna, as people are putting their reactions in the chat, what's your immediate reaction to the film? And maybe if you could say, why you thought this was an appropriate one for today. Why is this movie a valuable one for Americans to see on Vietnam War Veterans Day?
So I watched this movie when I was a little girl, and it got a lot of emotion from me, and I felt like I was watching the life of my mother, my own mother, because that girl's age was about my mother's age, and she was also being bombed by the U.S. bombs when she was 10 in her hometown, in my hometown Thanh Hóa. So like it's like seeing a cut from history that has something like directed, the direct connection to your life. And this movie, I think, is very important to especially Westerners and American, viewers, because as you know, about whenever we talk about the Vietnam War, people just think about what the Green Beret, or another like the Apocalypse movie, and they all from US narrative, the US perspective. And this movie shows you the actual real perspective from real Vietnamese war, innocent Vietnamese war, not just soldiers, not just grown-ups who fought in the war, who knew why they were in this and what were they fighting for. This movie showed the life of children, the life of innocent people who were affected by this war. Like the girl in the movie asked, she didn't understand why the USA bombed us, why they kept bombing the schools where my younger sister was studying. Why did it happen? That is literally the question that millions of Vietnamese been asking. Why did they do this to us? We never done anything. Vietnam never went to USA and invade and kill your people and bomb your people. Why are you doing this to us? And this is a very hard, tough, rough truth about the brutal war that we had to fight. We were dragged into this war. We didn't have any choice. We didn't start this war, and millions of us were killed by those bombs and napalms and Agent Orange and bullets. And yeah, I want to show you this movie specifically because this is the narrative that you've been missing in the West. The narrative of innocent people, innocent children, innocent kids that were heavily affected by this American war.
Absolutely, Luna. And judging from the comments in the chat, I think
Yeah.
I think this film did achieve that. I'm also wondering, on a day like this, Vietnam War Veterans Day, what should people in the United States, what should U.S. citizens be
Yeah.
thinking about on Vietnam Veterans Day?
Yeah. This is a tough question to answer because, the war is very complicated. And there are millions of people, and each person has their own story. People from the USA, both from Vietnam. You might have an uncle or grandpa or even their own father fought in this war. And you know what? That is not the reason why you should support the empire or the military or the war. I mean, my own family history is very complicated. I have one grandpa who fought and died in the Vietnam War in 1968 during the Tet Offensive. On the other side of my grandpa, he had fought in the Dien Bien Phu victory in 1954 against the colonialist France. He walked and brought rice to the soldiers who actually fought the war. So it's very important. And it is important to have a comprehensive and historical viewpoint when we talk about complicated problem like this and like a complicated thing like this. And this is a thing that I see that like happen very commonly in the USA, is that your people tend to simplify and essentialize things a lot. So, but you have to understand this. My grandfather, the one who had fought brought the rice to the Dien Bien Phu against the French resistance war. I mean, he was a hero of mine for helping in that resistance war, but he was also a feudal landlord that owned the whole town, and he worked for the feudal system. He was very, very, very rich before the land reforms in 1954. So I could not essentialize my own grandpa as like either he was a hero of mine who had fought the war, or he was an evil landlord. And the truth is that he was both, and I love my grandpa. Doesn't mean that I support the feudal system. Doesn't mean that I support that landlord system at that time, And so it's the same thing. If you have a family member who fought in the war, it doesn't mean that you have to support the Vietnam War. You have to support the empire or its military. The problem is very, very complicated. And you have to understand the complexity of this war. I cannot tell you what to think about your own grandpa, your own uncle, or your own father who fought in the war. What I can tell you is that I can teach you, I can show you the real Vietnamese perspective of the Vietnam War, from the Vietnamese people who suffer from this war, and how, we should all oppose American imperialism and their genocidal wars all over the world like that. So, and here's the thing too, I have talked to many Vietnam veterans online, and many of them regret what they did. They regret that they joined the war, but there are still some veterans who still worship, U.S. imperialism and support the war and said that this is a good thing. And I want them to know that they are wrong. And we need to confront these people. We need to show them the truth. Even though, as I said, and I saw many people who were like, oh, my uncle fought in the Vietnam War, so I don't know, I'm not sure. No, you must be sure, because you must know the truth of this war. You must know about the atrocities that the USA commit. And the fact that your uncle fought in that doesn't mean that you have to support it. It means that you have to be critical. You have to confront that truth. And it doesn't mean if you confront it, doesn't mean you don't love them. It's totally different. You have to have very nuanced and have comprehensive and historical viewpoint about this problem. So yeah, and I personally try not to center the American perspective when we talk about the Vietnam War, because we've had enough of it. You have a whole industry about it. It's called Hollywood. I am here now today and having my channel to show you the true Vietnam perspective. And I want to center the voice of the real Vietnamese people who were affected, involved in the war. Yeah.
And thanks very much for doing that for us today, Luna. I'm definitely learning a lot here. Just one other question that we have before we transition into the audience questions. Can you speak to how is it that people in Vietnam contend with the history of U.S. imperialism in the Asia Pacific and its current remilitarization of the region through the new Cold War that the U.S. is carrying out?
Yes. First, we teach our own people real history. We taught our people about, the thousands of years of resistant wars against all kinds of enemies, and why we remain independent today, and why we should protect our independence and freedom. And to be real honest with you, Vietnamese people, generally speaking, looking at the militarization of the USA and what it has been doing the whole world, bombing, drone strikes, killing people all over the world, we are scared. We are scared because we are just a small country and they've been forcing us to take a side. It's either us or China, we don't do that. We will not take a side. We will stay neutral and we will remain our independence and freedom. We hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst. Means that, yes, we hope that the US empire will someday somehow stop being an empire. And we hope that someday Vietnam and many other countries like Cuba, Laos, Venezuela, and China will somehow get rid of that civil power and, can flourish on our own. But at the same time, we prepare for the worst can happen. We prepare by, we are strengthening our agriculture, means that we will try to feed our own people whenever the worst happen, any sanction or anything, feed our own people. And also we are trying to get rid of the domination of US dollars in our economy, which is very hard. We are trading with other countries using our own currency instead of US dollars. So that is one of our attempts to do that. We trying to sway away from using US dollars. So that is one of the few things that we are doing. We're also preparing our own weapon system so we can defend ourselves like that. But generally speaking, yes, we hope for the best and we prepare for the worst. And we will try our best to remain, peace in the world like that. It's scary future.
Thanks very much for that important perspective and shedding some insight for us on how U.S. policy is still affecting the region to this day. There's a question in the chat here that I think a bunch of us are probably curious about. In the film, there's a brief mention that a trade union had donated a jacket to the girl at the start of the film. Are you able to speak more to what was the function of trade unions or labor-related organizing during the war?
I had a whole video about it talking about the labor, the labor law in Vietnam, and I can answer you now directly that the union movement is essential for the resistance wars of Vietnam against both France and the USA. It is essential. The union in Vietnam, the first union ever, it was called the Red Union. It was formed around 1927 to 1929. It was in a factory owned by French in the south of Vietnam, the Bason factory. And from that, they became the core part of the Communist Party of Vietnam, and then the whole Liberation Army of Vietnam. It was the unions were the place where people got radicalized. They understand the truth of capitalism. They understand the nature of capitalism, which was, exploitation of the capitalists. They learned racism coming from the French owners. And from that, they got exposed to communism and socialism and why we need to join together to find this war. And we can only win if we unite together. The union was like the core, stepping stone, like you must have that. So it is important. To this day, the unions in Vietnam is very, very powerful. We have our Federation of Labor Union in Vietnam has 11 million members. 11 million members. Meanwhile, the Communist Party of Vietnam only has 5.2 million. So the Workers' Union in Vietnam has double the members of the Communist Party of Vietnam, and they play as one of the important role in our political system, means that they have political power. They are in the government. They work with the government and the National Congress and the Communist Party of Vietnam. By now, about 90% of Vietnamese workers are unionized. Our goal is that maybe by 2030 or something like that, 100% of our workers will be unionized. And it is written in the law in Vietnam that in any company that has more than 5 workers want to form a union, there must be a union. And that union must be independent from the company, and they have a direct help from the local government, like they equal, and actually the system of workers union in Vietnam is more like syndicalism, means that we have a grassroots union, and then we have, the local like district union, and then we have a provincial union, have a national union. At the same time, we have a trade union that we have about 20 trade unions that cover 20 sectors of our industry. Means that one worker can be in multiple unions. One worker can be in this grassroots union, can also join their own district union, can also join that sector of industry that they work for, multiple like that. And they vote for their leaders and they vote for their, National Union Congress. So it's pretty amazing and pretty powerful.
Wow. Trying to imagine what that system could possibly look like in the US. I know our society would look real different if we had anything close to that. There's another question here in the chat that's been asked now, I think by 2 people. So I want to ask this one.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about the terms of the treaty that ended the war, and specifically the debt payments that were made between the United States, between Vietnam and the United States after it?
Yeah. So this is a story, a truth that not many will know about that. Not many at all, because they, the US propaganda system, okay, the mainstream media or your education system try to hide the truth. So the movie talk about the bombing raids in Hanoi in December 1972. And because the US lost in this bombing raids, they had to serious and sign the Paris Agreement in January 1973, right? And after that, they had to agree to start withdrawing US troops out of Vietnam. And from 1973 to 1975, they slowly withdrawing the US troops. But at the same time, they still aided the puppet regime in the south of Vietnam. They aided them even more because they technically, according to the Paris Agreement, the US troops could not fight directly, so they aided the puppet regime. They used Vietnamese people to fight against Vietnamese people, but the puppet regime was so bad at fighting that it took us just 2 more years to completely defeat them in 1975. But this is how the story started. Because the puppet regime lost, and we took over the government, and the North and South of Vietnam united. The US was very sour about this, and they couldn't accept the fact that they lost. They lost to this country on the other side of the earth. They forced Vietnamese government, the newly born Vietnamese government, to pay back the debt of the puppet regime that they funded themselves. They aided themselves, and now they lost. So they forced the North government of Vietnam to pay back that debt. And it was $145 million. It was a huge amount of money of Vietnam at that time, especially. It is big money now, but it was huge, massive at that. Vietnam was bombed back to the Stone Age. You saw the movies, the real footage of our city. This is the capital city of Vietnam, supposed to be, Washington, D.C. of the USA. And imagine your capital city would bomb back to the Stone Age like that. We were desperate. We had nothing. Our people were starving to death. And then we had to pay $145 million back to the country that did that to us. The amount of irony in this story. But we could not refuse this because the US, they had the power, they had the money, and they had the weapons. And they had the soft power they control the United Nations. And if we did not agree to pay the debt back, we would be sanctioned heavily by the USA. Even though the USA still sanctioned us all the way until 2006. They still. But then, so here's the thing. They asked us to pay back the debt in 1975. We kind of ignore it, like we're busy rebuilding our country. But then around 1994, when Vietnam was under heavy, comprehensive US sanctions, we were desperate. The US went back again and they asked us, hey, you need to pay this. If you pay this debt back, we will think about not sanctioning you anymore. So we had to agree to pay that back officially in 1990s, around 1994. And it took us until 2019, which was just 3-4 years ago. It took us until 2019 to pay all of that debt back. That is a story, and it's really irony, like so funny. While we were still paying the debt, the ridiculous debt back to the USA, on the other hand, they just use their media, power, mainstream media to scream, to make up some post saying oh, Vietnamese people love America right now. Vietnam and America have a great relationship right now. Vietnam actually love capitalism. On the other hand, they force us to pay that debt back. You know the irony here. Yes, we pay that, and yeah, it is like how the USA just control the narrative in the media all the way through.
Wow, thank you for that context, Luna. That's really shocking and disgusting stuff. Related to what you were saying at the end of there was a question asked earlier on about the perception of the U.S. there. I don't want to center Vietnamese perspectives, but I think this would probably be valuable for our audience to understand as well. How has the perception of the U.S. in Vietnam changed from 1972 until now? And what do you see as driving those views, whether hostile, neutral, or even more positive?
So this is a thing that I guess most of USians, the Americans will not get. Vietnamese people, we are forgiving people, but we will not forget. We will not forget, but we are forgiving people. I personally met with a lot of Vietnamese veterans who fought in the Vietnam War against Americans. And I personally met the personal secretary of Luna Nguyen, the great zero of Vietnam who have Vietnam won against. I met him in real life because he happened to be my dermatologist when I had skin problem. I came there and I saw a huge picture of him with Luna Nguyen in his office. Like, oh, excuse me, is that you up there? So like, yeah, I was the secretary of it. Like, what, really? And then, yeah, that is freaking true story, man. And then I was so excited, and I went there with my partner, like EJ, right? And he talked about, the Vietnam War and how he feels like deeply sorry about that. He didn't know what to fix it, but like he deeply sorry. You know what? That secretary of Vong and Zap, the doctor just say like, he just smile, say like, don't worry. We should, Vietnamese people we already move on. We put the past aside, and Vietnam and USA now have a good relationship with each other and already move on. So you don't need to, to think about it and to feel like too guilty about it, because like, we already move on. And there's another side story that I want to add into that is that according to our own history of 1,000 years of fighting for our independence, we had many enemies. We fought against colonialist France for 100 years. And America, I'm sorry, but you are just one of our enemies. You're not that important. So we have a kind of the same day in Vietnam, we call the day for injuries and matters in the world. And on that day, we commemorate the people who fought in the resistance war against the French. We fought the resistance wars against imperialist USA. We fought the war against, the genocidal regime of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia for 10 years. Like, you are just one of our enemies. You're not that important. So actually, I am very I don't know, surprised when the USA literally has a day to commemorate the Vietnam War veterans. Like, wow, so you really take us serious. So we don't. We just have a day to remember all of the soldiers of all the wars, not just that one. So yeah, actually, yeah, just long story short, you're not that important. So don't feel too bad about it. You should really focus on how to, help your own people, rebuild your own country, and build your own movement here.
Thank you for those wise words, Luna, and the insight. I think we have time for maybe one, maybe two more questions here.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure. Yeah, I'm sorry we can't get to all of them. These are all really good questions, very valuable.
I know.
I know. See if we can,
I wish we could have more time.
I really wish we could too. Maybe we'll do a part 2 at some point.
Absolutely.
Not to shoehorn you into that, Luna. But one other question here, I think would be insightful for us. What was the scale of the destruction of Vietnam from the war? I think we may have a bit of a scale of that, but especially though, how did Vietnam rebuild after the war between then up until now?
I could write a whole essay about it or shoot a whole documentary about it, but long story short, after the war in 1975, Vietnam spent 10 years trying to do the subsidizing model following Stalin and the USSR. At that time, what we did was that we trying to eliminate currency and monetary system. We use food stamps instead of money. So as you saw in the movie, the girl used some kind of a book to go and get her rice, right? That is a system that we use. So like when you volunteer to work on a farm, your own farm, or the families, or the village farm, or the factory, or something like that, then the factory and the local government will work together and assign you some kind of food stamps, not really food stamps, but I mean, you can understand, you get the point, right? So people would keep that book, like the rice book, and then, the meat book, and then the other household stuff book. And they brought that book every month whenever need to the government stores and grab those back for their living. My mom lived like that for 10 years. We did that from 1975 to 1985, and we failed. I'm sorry, but we failed. We had, at that time, this is one of the biggest mistakes that we did, to be honest. We were too dogmatist about it. We were not practical. Vietnam was the country that was bombed back to the Stone Age. We didn't have nothing, and at the same time, we were sanctioned by the rest of the world because we dared to end the existence of the genocidal regime of the Khmer Rouge. And the whole United Nations, and I had a whole video about it already, the whole United Nations took that as an excuse to sanction Vietnam even more. At that time, there were mostly 2 countries that have Vietnam. It was Cuba and it was Laos. Cuba was a country that donated vaccines and medicines to Vietnam. And Laos was the one who secretly traded with us so we can get more food and, MSG and cooking oil and clothes. At that time, that the USSR and the China split, the Sino-Soviet split. So we could not ask for any help from both of them. So that was the most of the country. It was a very, very tough time for Vietnam. Domestically, we were devastated. Our people were starving to death. Talking about the foreign affairs, we were sanctioned. And even our two friends, Laos and Cuba has been under US sanction even to this day. And Laos is the most bombed country on us. We were devastated. So that was why in 1986, we had to revise our decision. In that National Congress meeting in that year, we admit that we did wrong. We were too dogmatist and we were not practical. We did not understand our material conditions and we made the wrong big mistake. That was why we decided to have a đổi mới renovation, or you can đổi mới reforms. It means that we had to open our country, our economy, so we can borrow money from the IMF and the World Bank. He can borrow money. We could not ask money for free. No, we can borrow money from the IMF and the World Bank so we can rebuild our country. We had to do that so we can persuade the USA to stop sanctioning us. We had to open our economy we had to expose our country to US imperialism so we can have money to feed our own people. That is a very tough choice that Vietnam had to make. And lots of people, especially people from USA, they don't understand this. They thought that Vietnam abandoned and betrayed communism and socialism for opening that. They don't understand why we had to do that. We spent 10 years trying to do and to build our dream, and we failed, and we were facing the consequence of millions of us starving to death. My mom could starve to death in the 1980s if Vietnam didn't open our economy. And that is a tough choice. And we understand that we would expose our country to US imperialism, but we had to do in order to save millions of people. This is a tough decision for anybody because running a whole country is not easy, especially running a country that dare to follow socialism, while the USA still remain as an empire, control the whole world. So yeah, and to this day, Vietnam called our economy socialist-oriented market economy. Both socialism and capitalism exist in our own country, and I also have a whole video explaining about it. It's Vietnam Socialist on my channel, so you can go and check it out. But what I'm telling you right now is that Vietnam now is one of the fastest economy in Asia, fastest growing economy in Asia. It means that we are doing something right. We are facing a lot of problems. I'm not saying we are perfect. No, we are a long way to be a utopia. We have so many problems. We just a baby step ahead on building socialism in our country. It is very tough. And what I'm been telling you is this. I don't want you to just follow exactly our steps, because every different country has their own material conditions, whole different story in different society. The reason why I'm here and having my channel is that I show you what we did and what we are doing, so you can look at us and learn lessons from it. Yes, we made mistakes. We also had some achievement. Look at us, learn from us, and build your own movement. Do not asking you to copy exactly what we do, because we're not perfect. We made mistakes. Learn from our mistakes and learn from our achievement too. And that is why because the DSA is one of the biggest party of socialist people in the USA. I hope that you can educate your own people, can lead your own people, can have a movement to have your own people. Look at countries like Vietnam, look at what we did right and what we did wrong at the same time. Learn from it, have your own, and be knowing this. You will make mistakes. But as Ho Chi Minh said, we are not afraid of making mistakes. The thing that we should be afraid of is that we make a mistake, but we do not fix it. That is the thing that we should be scared of. So you go do it. You have to learn theory. By the way, talking about theory, this is the book that I just translated. Please go read. This is the theory part. Vietnam, this is theory coming from the country that actually won the wars against France and the USA. Learn from this. This is a theory. And then apply that theory into real life. Learn what works and what don't work. And then apply that what work into your movement. I really hope, because you are the one who live right in the belly of the beast. You have to fight the fight. We already won our fight and we are building it. But because the USA still exists, the empire still exists, we're still being oppressed by it. And you are here. You are our biggest hope. And I really hope that the DSA can have a strong movement. And what you do, what you build, the movement that you build will not only just beneficial to your own people, it is beneficial to the rest of the world, especially to Vietnamese people.
Thank you so much, Luna. I know we're just out of time here. I promise we won't disappoint you, but I'm sorry. There's just one more question here.
Yes.
I gotta ask this. If you don't gotta, if as opposed to the chat, this was just too good. But as a professional United States human rights observer, what would you? I mean, that's what it says on your Twitter bio. So I assume that's your job.
Yep. I have a certificate for it. So yeah.
Okay, great. What do you think it will take to wake up Americans to the reality of the role their country is playing in the world? If you keep this one quick, I'd appreciate it.
What will it take you? Read this book. That's what it takes.
That's
Education
right.
is the key. Education is the key. You can just buy this book from banyanhouse.org or lunanguyen.com/shop, or just go to my channel. It's all everywhere in my channel. So this is it. You learn theory. You need to learn theory. But not just that, because if you do that, you're just being a dogmatist. You need to apply theory into practice.
Don't forget the ebook's going to be free.
Yeah, and the ebook is going to be free. Thank you, EJ, my comrade. The ebook is going to be free. We have just been so busy and there's still some technical problems. So we're not published the ebook yet, but swear within this week, the ebook is going to be free. So don't worry if you cannot afford that. Totally fine. Go to banyanhouse.org. That is, I'll just follow my Twitter, Luna_VM, that's it. Learn theory. And then learn history. Learn the true history. Do not learn the whitewash version. I'm sorry, like, a bunch of historians, I just don't want to name any names. But anyway, learn the true history from actual perspective of the victims of the US empire. Learn the truth, learn theory, and then apply that into real life. Go organize. You organize. You have to go out there to start the change. Reading is just the first step. The second and more important step is to have to go out there and make the change. That is the most important. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a game plan.
Yep.
Sounds like we got some things to do after this call event. So I just really want to thank you again, Luna, and really can't thank you enough for your time, your generosity here, and your insight. Thanks also to the members of the International Committee who provide tech support and streaming for this event. Really deeply grateful. I'll just name y'all Ron, Gerard, and Ryan. Thank you all for your efforts. And thank you very much to EJ for providing additional technical support as well. And finally, of course, the biggest thank you of all here goes out to our audience. Thank you for participating. Thank you for spreading the word. And together, I know we're going to do big things. The link to Luna's book is in the chat. And you can also join the IC by going to dsaic.org/apply. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat. I appreciate it. Other than that, thank you all for joining us on this Vietnam War Veterans Remembrance Day, and looking forward to seeing y'all in the fight, and also seeing some nice reviews of this book hopefully go out on the internet as well.
Exactly. Thank you so much, everybody. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
See y'all in the fight, comrades. This was great. Looking forward to seeing y'all soon. Take care.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.